think of your food as your lover. If you can't make time for it, why is it going to make time for you? You've got
Mm.
to you want to invest in this relationship because you want to be in it for the long haul.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A. Price Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada Gore. Our guest today is Adrienne Hew, a certified nutritionist who takes a fresh, lighthearted approach to dieting and to life in general. Adrienne is known as the nutrition heretic, and you'll find out why in just a few moments. You may not agree with everything Adrienne says today, but you most certainly will be entertained. And you just may gain insight on your own approach to wellness. Wise Traditions is brought to you today by Magnetico Sleep Pads. Recharge and repair your body while you sleep. Go to magneticosleep.com. And Free and Healthy Children International, offering a safe alternative to vaccination. Visit freeandhealthychildren.org. And now, on to our interview. Adrienne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me here, Hilda.
So I understand you've written a book called Frenching Your Food. And in there you say that a 70-year-old taught you to do that. What are you talking about?
She taught me how to French. Yes, I wasn't proud of it for many years, taking the advice of a French woman. But when I talk about Frenching, obviously it's a play on words. We have such a hideous relationship with food in America. And when people are always talking about, oh, I follow the Mediterranean diet, the French diet, and they're all impressed with themselves, patting themselves on the back. But when they look at the French diet, what they really think is, I just eat whatever I want, and then I drink red wine at the end of the day. And when I talk about the 70-year-old who taught me how to French, she was a neighbor. I was studying in France. I was 18 years old, studying in France in Avignon. And I lived in a small town called Le Pontet, and this lady lived next door to us, and she would come over every day and chit chat with the lady of our house. And she would sit there and she would disseminate information over the table. And what is so precious to me now, looking back on that, is that when she would share this information about the wisdom of what the French do, and about the wisdom of how much water is safe to drink, and about the wisdom of lard being less, what was the word that she used? Less burdensome on your body than butter, even. I love butter, and she did too, but she's just saying, hey, lard is actually lighter on your body than butter is. And this was in America. It took us enough to accept butter as acceptable in the diet, but lard, give me a break,
Mm-hmm.
But what I look back and I cherish about this is that when I was 18, I was like most people when it came to health. I read the magazine, the freebie magazine at the checkout stand. We didn't have the internet then, but some people did. But Al Gore, I was thinking. Sorry. We didn't have the internet, but I would read the odd book here and there, and I'd get the information. I'd look at the chart at the doctor's office showing the pyramid with what you should and shouldn't eat.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking that I know it all, even though I didn't necessarily buy what she said, hook, line, and sinker. It stayed with me, and it was information that I just wasn't able to reconcile, given all of the dogma that was being perpetuated in the mainstream in America.
So at that time, it sounds like it almost went in one ear and out the other, except that it didn't go out because somehow you were able to tap into it again.
Right, exactly. I retained the information until I could figure out where it fit within the matrix of all of this conflicting information. And when you look at a lot of the books that are written about French diet and things, they're still coming from the American perspective, and they're trying to retrofit the French diet to what American science knows.
Yeah.
So when I wrote the book, I felt that I really had to do it for a couple of reasons. One was because it was unadulterated information, the way it had been given to me, which now I keep using this word cherish, and I embrace the fact that I have this information, and it's coming from my most naive self
Right.
When I say naive, I just mean the least adulterated, the least affected by the outer voices.
Mm-hmm.
But also because when I started dealing with clients after I got my degree, I'm a certified nutritionist. After I got my degree in nutrition, and I started talking to my clients, the hardest thing for them to understand was eating real food, and it still is. It's the biggest hurdle that you will find as a practitioner, that people do not trust real food. We will trust some dude in a white lab coat over the very foods that are, I'm looking out at my garden, that are growing in my garden because the government said this. I met a woman the other day and she's going on and on and on about real food and you got to eat real food, and she's like, but I never touch rice because they did this to the rice, and I don't eat this because
Oh my
dairy
gosh.
is the devil, and oh my gosh, and I'm thinking to myself, and meanwhile she's eating her poison bagel sitting in front of
Oh.
me with God knows what and nitrates on it. And it's gotten to be so confusing to people that I really feel that if we want health, we have to start repairing this relationship with our food. In my book, what I liken it to is these fake foods. I don't even call them fake foods anymore. I call them the anti-foods.
Oh.
There's Christ and the Antichrist. There's food and the anti-food because these anti-foods, they're made to look like food. They're made to replace food, but are they? Uh,
Right.
um, I, I actually have my own podcast, and on it, I was recently talking to somebody about here in Hawaii, we have these programs for children, and a lot of targeting to get children to eat healthier. And these government guidelines say no trans fats and this and that. So I'm actually sitting next to a pile of stuff they give out at the public school for kids, and this is the healthy food now, right? Okay,
Uh-huh.
a can of Van Camp's pork and beans and tomato sauce. Okay, so we've got the prepared white beans, tomato puree, water, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, salt, distilled vinegar, pork with an asterisk. Oh, may contain soy. Baking soda, onion powder, natural and artificial flavors, spice, calcium chloride. So my point here is that we will trust this thing in a can because hey, we got it from the school, it's safe, it fits the government guidelines. But going out to a restaurant and ordering a steak is off limits, or
Mm-hmm.
even a hamburger. Yeah, I have no anybody who knows me knows that I will eat a bacon double cheeseburger. But I want to know where the bacon, the double cheese, and the burger
Yes.
came from. That's my only criterion. I don't think that's a lot to ask for.
Now, I think you said you work as a nutritionist. So the people who are coming to you, you said they, on the one hand, they hear real food and think, okay, and yet there's fear. What is this? What is it, do you think, Adrienne, that's holding us back from embracing all the wisdom that that 70-year-old woman told you so many years ago?
It's slick marketing for one. We've been marketed to for the last pretty much 100 years about gradually more and more, and particularly in the last 30 to 40 years, just demonizing everything that's good in this world. And I guess you asked where does this fear come from? Yes, it comes from marketing. It comes from false promises of marketing, probably more likely. And I know I started to talk about what I discuss in the book, and I look at this marketing, these messages, as a bad boyfriend. I'm sure you've had that friend, right? Who's had just one bad relationship after another. Just,
Mm-hmm.
same nasty guy, just a different face. And that is every diet that has been marketed to us since the beginning.
Uh-huh.
Every new cult fad, whatever, is just the same nasty betraying boyfriend with a different face.
Mm.
I don't care, and I'm going to name names: Weight Watchers, South Beach, just name them all. Macrobiotic, whatever. And when it fails, the boyfriend looks at you, or in this case the diet, it just says, "Oh, well, it's your fault. There's something wrong with
Uh,
you." So this is where you get the people who say, "Oh, it's in my genes. It's heredity. I can't do anything about it. I do all the right things. It's heredity." No, it's not. It's that your boyfriend told you to do this, and he darn well knew it wasn't going to serve you.
I love that illustration. That's a great one. I'd never heard that before. And that's one thing I like about your book, too. I feel like you talk, as you said, in a kind of unadulterated, unvarnished voice.
That's what I go for. They call me the nutrition heretic, although I have one friend who calls me the Pope of Health. But they call me the nutrition heretic because I'm not taking sides. The only side I take is real food. But when it comes to all the minutia in between, you got to avoid grains, or you got to avoid sugar, or you got to avoid whatever, meat and dairy and all these other things. If you can just put real food on the table from me, I'll let my body decide. And that's what we have not done anymore these days. We don't do this. We don't let our bodies decide from real food. We put assumptions on food. Like, I had a friend, she was half Jewish, so part of her judgment in this regard came from the Jewish side of her family. But she said to me one time that she could not eat pork because it made her feel so sick. And she would go on and on and on about the pork and then this and just over and over about how pork was so bad for you and it does this. So I said, "What exactly happens to you when you eat pork?" "Oh, I've never had it." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Oh, I've never had pork." And I said, "But how do you know that it makes you sick?" So a lot of times this is what happens to people. They hear these stories, they hear about the congestion and the mucus and just all these really negative buzzwords that people use to promote their agendas.
Mm-hmm.
And they buy it even if they never had the food. So what happens when you drink milk? "Oh, I get so phlegmy." "Oh, did you know that phlegm clears dust and things out of your system? Maybe that's what the milk is doing." Because if anybody who's gone on a milk fast will say, "Yeah, the first few days I felt kind of mucusy, and then everything passed through my system, and I felt like $1,000,000." Why? Because the milk in this case, and I'm not saying ultra pasteurized, homogenized nonsense that they sell at the 7-Eleven, but a real glass of milk will clear out all of that gunk in your system. The more phlegmy you get, you may want to consider that it's just pulling out pollens and all other kinds of contaminants that are in your system. So a
So,
lot of sorry, I was just going to say a lot of
go
it's
ahead.
just getting in touch with what those processes are and what they really signify.
So interesting. As we're talking, I'm just thinking, you sound like a kind of person that isn't afraid anymore and you are willing to embrace. So let's say I'm the girl with a lot of bad boyfriends. I've tried diet after diet. How do I take some steps to be willing to embrace this real food and all that you're talking about?
The first thing that I would do, and actually I'm putting together a little workbook, and I might even do a full-fledged course on Frenching your food, because people bought the book, they loved it, but they're like, "I don't know where to start." Okay, so where to start? One thing I would say is slow down. Slow down. I don't care what you're eating. Don't change what you eat now, and taste what you're eating, and find out if you really are truly enjoying what you eat, because so much of what we eat today is eaten because of political correctness, because it's the right thing to do. It's the healthy thing to do. And by the way, the word health means absolutely nothing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have had people tell me, "Oh, I'm so healthy except for this cancer." So, "I feel great except for this heart arrhythmia." Thing if I could get rid of it. So, people do things because they are the accepted thing to do in the name of health, and they will tell themselves and convince themselves and choke down all kinds of ungodly things in the name of
Mm-hmm.
"I'm a healthy eater," but they never stop to taste what they eat. So the first thing I would do is say, "I don't care what you eat, just keep doing the same thing. Take 20 minutes from start to finish. Put that plate of food in front of you. Don't drive, talk, watch TV, movies, read. Don't do anything except focus on your food, and at the most some light conversation with your family."
And that's something that people in other countries do really well. I know because I've traveled quite a bit and they know how to slow down and savor a meal. They're not rushed. And it's more than just the food, isn't it? It's the conversation, it's the connection. We're
Right.
really missing the boat on that. I'm so glad that your tip number one is slow down.
Right, because when people taste what they eat, they don't like it most of the time. They're like, "Oh my god, this is really horrible. I thought I couldn't live without this. But
Uh-huh.
meanwhile, but these distractions that we've created, the computer and so on and so forth, while we're eating, take our attention away from what we're eating because it is so vile and disgusting. We don't want to think about it. So, and maybe I'm pushing it by saying vile and disgusting, but it's not as palatable as we would choose if we did not cloud our judgment with the judgment of others.
And you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said we trust the person in the white coat to tell us what is healthy. I know a young girl used to come over to our house when my girls were done practicing lacrosse. They'd all come over, bring their friends, and this young girl would say, when I eat healthy at my friend's parents' house, it tastes horrible. When I eat healthy at your house, it tastes great. Why? Because I was embracing real food. Our definition of what was healthy was different.
Right. Right. Well, that actually brings up for me a situation where a friend of mine who was a raw food vegan, she sent her daughter home with us, and she said her kids were vegetarian. They weren't raw food, but they were vegetarian. And every time I would make vegetables, they wouldn't touch the vegetables. They actually they wouldn't touch much of anything. Yeah,
Oh.
if I so and they were tiny, tiny little kids, and especially compared to the size of my kids. And I'm short. I'm 5'2". My husband, he's not short, but he's not as tall as he thinks he is. you know but my kids are big. When I say big, they're actually, those old height weight charts that they give for kids. My kids are right down the middle. They've been in 50th to 60th percentile all their lives. We look, and this is something really important to keep in mind, is that when we look around, we tend to see children on very opposite sides of the spectrum. We see
Mm-hmm.
the really, really scrawny kids, and then we see the massively obese children, and exceedingly few fit in the normal category anymore.
Mm-hmm. You're right about that. Just opening our eyes and looking around, we can see that drastic difference in the height and the weight of the kids. But going back to this
But
little
yes,
vegan
sorry.
kid,
So yeah, so she comes. So I said to her mom, "Look, if she's coming over here, what the does she eat?" Because I have tried to feed this kid, every kid-friendly vegetable, salad, nothing. She won't touch anything. She's like, "Oh, really? Well, I don't know why." Ooh. But I've seen her shop. I know what she buys. But I wasn't
uh-huh.
going to lower my standard for my kid because her kid only ate frozen waffles. So she said, "Oh," she goes and she has a talk with her. She's like, "Look, Adrienne's gonna cook something for you. You eat it. I don't care what it is. You just eat it, okay?
Uh-huh.
Don't be difficult." So she comes to my house, and I'm like, "Okay, what can I make? You know what? Old standby from the '70s, grilled cheese." So I get out my bread and I make my grilled cheese, and she fusses about the corners, the outside, the rind or whatever of the bread, the baked part, right? She complains about that, which my daughter just scarfed up. She was like, "You're not eating now? Okay, I'll taste it." With your hands. But when I later on that night, I get a text from her mom saying, "What the heck do you do to grilled cheese that makes it the best grilled cheese ever?" And I'm like, "What the heck? What are you talking about?" She goes, "My kid doesn't eat grilled cheese. She hates grilled cheese." It's like at the top of her I hate list is grilled cheese.
Ah.
But she likes your grilled cheese. And I was like, "Well, let me see." I bought sourdough bread from the woman who makes it at the same co op that we go to together. I got her bread. I used Amish butter and Amish cheese, which was very close to where we lived. And she texts back, "How am I supposed to compete with that?" And it just told me everything because I saw her. She was buying the fake cheeses, the almond, soy, whatever cheeses, and the margarines and
Mm.
things like that. And I'm like, it starts with the ingredients. You can take the simplest of things. And I know I talked about the bacon double cheeseburger a few times now,
It
but
sounds so good.
but anything you take that seems like it's junk food, just upgrade the quality of ingredients.
We pause now to recognize our sponsors. Did you know that you are dependent on the Earth's magnetic field for life? Did you know the Earth's magnetic field has declined drastically? Magnetico sleep pads are essential to correct that deficiency. Recharge and repair your body while you sleep. Visit magneticosleep.com. Again, that's magneticosleep.com. And parents, are you concerned about vaccine side effects? Free and Healthy Children International offers a simple, safe, and effective way to reduce infectious disease in your family: homeoprophylaxis. Free and Healthy Children International supports research and access to homeoprophylaxis, the vaccine alternative. Visit freeandhealthychildren.org to find a practitioner in your area. Now, back to the interview.
And if I had a second thing to tell people to do, is just start gradually upgrading the quality of your salt. Switch from margarine to butter. I'm not even talking organic yet. Just get in the habit of looking at the real food mono ingredient products that you can get into your family.
Wow, that's a great practical tip.
Because I think people jump the gun. Oh, I can't afford organic. Just back up. You're not even eating that's real.
And it seems like such a jump, right? To go from, let's say they're eating, Lucky Charms for breakfast, to suddenly switching to soaked oats, overnight. So, okay, so what can you do in between? I'm a big advocate of the same thing, Adrienne. I'm like, just take baby steps in the right direction and you will get there.
Right. Well, I'm a little, personally, I need to do things whole hog, or else I fizzle out. You get distracted. That happens to a lot of people. But these are just some really basic things. So the next time you run out of salt, just buy Celtic sea salt instead. Just as you finish one thing, replace it with a better quality, less tampered with version of it.
And is that one of the secrets of the French, that they have those real ingredients you're describing?
Absolutely. And they do eat other things. And actually, I'm going to tell you about a success story, because when I wrote the book, even though I talk about it being the secret to their weight loss and longevity, et cetera, it wasn't written to be a diet book. People are looking for the guru. They're looking for this new cult leader to tell them what to do, right? I was really just filling in the gaps for people. So this woman, and we have a French friend in common. She picked up my book at this French woman's house, and she was like, I'm going to read this. So it's a very small book and very, you can read it in like an hour or two, right? So she reads through it. She's like, every woman in America needs this book. Is what when I finally meet her, because she had read it before she met me, and she's like, every woman in America needs this book. And she went and she bought like another 10 copies. Over the past year, she's bought another 20 copies and has just given it out to people, because she's like, if you want to know the secret to my success, it's in this book. And basically what happened in her case was she wanted to use this as a maintenance diet after spending 2 years losing 25 pounds. When she started using the book, 2 months later, she had lost 15 pounds. It's all she did was follow this basic advice in the book.
So like you said, you weren't looking to be a dietary guru or have the next, body shake business or something like that. Exactly. You were just trying to give some practical advice, and it was resonating with people.
It was resonating with people, and she said, the greatest part is I don't diet. And so when you ask about what do French women focus on real ingredients, absolutely, but they also eat extremely simply. And I look at dairy and protein, and when I say protein, I don't use that loosely as a lot of people will say, but I use it in the traditional French way that was taught to me, which is meat. And when I say meat, that could be fish, eggs, some kind of animal food. I look at those as the glue that brings the nutrition to the rest of the diet.
Interesting.
Does that make sense? So as opposed to, a lot of people will say, like, I have one friend, and like when we cook together, everything ends up tasting the same, because she's got to throw peanut butter on top because that's her protein. And then she's got to put a pumpkin because that's what's here. And then she's got some kind of greens. And then she found some mung bean sprouts, and there's some dust under the fridge. And she's just like gathering as much stuff as she can. She's just throwing it all in the pot. And then, noodles. And so it's like everything kind of ends up looking and tasting the same. And I call it just junking up your meal, because at that point you don't even know what you're eating anymore. It's just and it doesn't necessarily taste bad. Don't get me wrong. It's just that there's so much stuff going on.
Well, you know what? There's a trend right now in the U.S. To declutter and tidy up, because there's a sense of peace and comfort that comes from kind of streamlining. So what I hear you saying is, let's streamline our diets as well.
Exactly. And if you want to bring that unifying force to your meal, consider a bone broth at the base. consider, some dairy products, some sour cream, added to your soup or even your salad. One of the people, I want to say one of the founders of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York, which is not a school that I ever took part in, but I remember him saying he was vegan and he went to India and he was having his health problems and stuff. And he goes to see an Ayurvedic doctor there, and this Indian guy says, "You need to put a female energy in your diet. Add some dairy." And if it wasn't for that guy, and what's funny is that if that guy is here in the US and said that, he would have probably taken that as having his judgment clouded by the food pyramid or something.
Uh-huh.
In my opinion, because I've seen this happen many times. But he goes to India, and this Indian guy in India probably didn't even speak great English, says to him, "Add dairy." So when we want to have a good unifying force, not only for nutrition but for flavor, consider some of these foods that have been off limits to you previously: the salt, the butter, the dairy, the bone broth, the flecks of meat, to bring it full circle.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
It does not have to be complicated. And so this woman who lost the 15 pounds in 2 months, Frenching her food, she had a French student living with her last year. And this is when she was already doing the diet. But what this girl said to her is like, geez, what happened was they were in the process of moving. And so as you're trying to clear out the fridge and clutter and things, they were eating out a little bit more than usual. And still, they were only, I say as an American, eating out 2 to 3 times a week. And this girl is like, "You guys eat out a lot." She's like, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "We eat out on our birthdays, and that's it." Back in France, that's all we do.
Wow.
And it really drew her attention to the fact that, yes, even though and this woman's a foodie. She was never somebody who really ate a bunch of junk, but she was snacking in between meals. And you don't, these little peccadillos, we don't look at them. We pretend we don't notice. Like, "Oh, well, I'll just slip it in my mouth and nobody will see." It's like, it's like swiping a pen at the bank, You're just, "Oh, I'll just take it. Nobody will see if I just slip this in my mouth casually, and it doesn't count. If nobody saw it, it doesn't count," right? So,
Right,
so,
right.
she was saying, yeah, this girl like really just honed in on this, and since then, she's like, "Okay, now we've cut back even more from that, because as it was, we weren't really eating out, but we did it during this time because we were moving. But really, we really realized that we don't need to." Another thing that it becomes a hurdle for a lot of people is that they think, "Oh, well, I just don't have time to cook this." And again, something we've been sold by the media. How many commercials have you seen saying, "Oh, your kid could just throw this crap in the microwave and it'll be done in 30 seconds and feed them after
Mm-hmm.
school," right?
Yep.
But that's not realistic, is it? Last night I didn't have time to cook, but in half an hour I whipped up sautéed Swiss chard with steamed potatoes. It's a dish that I learned to make in Spain, cooked in olive oil, and then I just had some nice sausage straight from the butcher was in the freezer. That takes no time to thaw in a tub of water. In less than 20 minutes, I had that and a small salad ready to go for dinner.
Wow.
How now, if I were to say, "Oh, I don't have time to cook," I would have had to get everybody in the room. "What do you want to eat? Okay, where are we ordering from? Where are we going to go fetch the darn thing after it's ordered?"
Right. And
And
if you say you don't have time to cook, but you would go in your car 10 minutes to go pick up the pizza and 10 minutes back, in that amount of time, you prepared your family a real meal with real ingredients.
exactly, and leftovers for lunch the next day. Hello, just stick it in a thermos. Those old things are coming back, because it's so simple. Just heat up that extra chili. If you had soup for dinner, heat that up. Put a little piece of bread or whatever you can have as your starch on the side. Have that for lunch.
Yes, I'm a big fan of making one meal, cooking once, and then eating 2 or 3 times with it. It's just fantastic. And it does save time on those nights when you're feeling rushed. It's like, oh, yes, I've got that soup that I froze 2 weeks ago or whatever.
Yes. Oh, and you know what my other thing is? The oven that you can set to cook overnight or whenever. So
Yeah.
I have a programmable oven. So I make we talked about soaking oats, for example. I soak my oats. I probably don't do it as long as I should because I normally don't start until dinner time. I might toast them up and then I soak them with a little. Actually, I use the rinsing water because I rinse my kefir grains periodically. So I just drain that water onto them, and then I cover it with water and I let that sit in my crock pot. Just before I go to bed, I turn on the crock pot, and in the morning, everybody's got breakfast ready to go. I don't have to, all we have to do is throw in whatever we want: cinnamon, maple syrup, butter, whatever. That's the fastest breakfast I know how to make, okay? Other
Mm-hmm.
than a leftover and an omelet. But then I make enough that we have leftovers from that. So now on phase two is I will take some of those leftovers, figure out how many people are going to be here for breakfast in the morning. Okay, put that in the pot. I have a pot that seals really well overnight. Stick that in the oven, program the oven to turn itself on at 6 a.m. and shut itself off at 7 a.m. And somewhere in between that, I will wake up, pull that pot out, and hot breakfast is ready again. And I did nothing.
That sounds fantastic. You are not the first person I've interviewed that has mentioned the crock pot or the beauty of using some of this modern technology to make real food accessible.
Right. Because it's this whole myth of everything being more difficult is probably one because you're doing the junking up the food, like you say, you're cluttering your food, so it's become more laborious, or you're just approaching it the wrong way. Because you know what, think of your food as your lover. If you can't make time for it, why is it going to make time for you? You've got
Mm.
to, you want to invest in this relationship because you want to be in it for the long haul. If you treat your spouse the way you treat your food, your spouse ain't gonna last too long. You know what I'm saying? People
Right,
don't want to
right.
be around other people who think of them after the fact.
Yeah, if
So
we don't invest in our food or we don't care, our bodies are not going to be nurtured, right? We're not going to be nurtured and loved back. That's what I hear you saying.
absolutely, absolutely. So take time, tune in, pay attention. When I'm sure every woman in particular can identify with the husband that doesn't hear them talk. I just told you that. What do you mean you didn't hear me say that? It's because he wasn't paying attention. Do you like to be treated that way? Then don't treat your food that way.
That's a great word. Hey, and as we prepare to close here, Adrienne, you've given us some great ideas for just getting a start on how to approach our relationship with food, looking for real ingredients, slowing down. Is there anything else that you want to say as we prepare to wrap up to our listeners? What is one thing that you would recommend people do to improve their health?
Relax. And relax in every sense of the word. If you do not get enough rest, one of the tips in the book is to sleep a minimum of 7 hours at night. We pride ourselves on being able to push ourselves to the limit. Oh, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. You got four? I only got three. You got three. I have a newborn baby. I only got two, and that was in 15 minutes. So like everybody's trying to one up each other with how
Yeah.
much more tired and busy they are. Slow down. Okay, if you've got that much to do, find a way to delegate, bring the kids in to help. And God forbid I should say this, but traditionally a lot of times when people had kids, they made them work. You work the farm, you work the kitchen, everybody had a chore. Let your children know their place in the family. That's what chores really are. They're letting children know where they belong, where they fit in this hierarchy of family.
Mm-hmm.
So don't think that you have to do everything for them. Let them take part in this. Slow down, get enough sleep so that you can digest the food that you've eaten throughout the day. Slow down and breathe. When you sleep, you breathe more deeply into that belly space where the oxygen is coming in and you are digesting optimally. So don't overlook that. And if your sleep is getting in the way of your exercise, choose the sleep, because exercise is great, but when we look at healthy societies, including the French, they're not riding bikes everywhere and running for their lives and climbing mountains most of the time. They're relaxing. They're taking leisurely walks. They're enjoying life. They're enjoying their neighbors. They're going out for a cafe with their friends. It's a much more social way. So just bring all of that romance that you want in your personal relationships, bring it, spend time with it. Go down to the beach, carry some simple, maybe you have some leftover salad from dinner last night. Maybe you have a little, I don't know, I'm using potatoes a lot here, but mashed potatoes. Maybe you have a few slices of sourdough bread, a little cheese, some nuts, a hard boiled egg, a can of tuna. Just keep it simple and keep everything relaxed, even your food and your approach to food.
That sounds like the best way to get the most out of our food. So thank you so much, Adrienne, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks for listening today. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts. What do you think of today's topic? Shoot us an email at podcast@westonaprice.org and let us know. You can also find us on Facebook, Weston A. Price Foundation, and Twitter @Weston A. Price. For more information on today's subject and our guests, go to our website, westonaprice.org, and click on the word podcast.